Well, good morning. So I think what we've heard this morning in the wise words of both Freddie Mercury and Robert Norum is that marketeers are under pressure. And actually, I thought it might be quite interesting today to just talk through what we're seeing with our clients, some of their experiences, and then kind of 4 key things that they're doing to re-energize and reinvigorate their people and programs. But before we crack into that, I actually thought it would be really interesting, a quick show of hands in the room. So who is finding that they actually are under more pressure? Who's about the same and who's less? So quick show of hands. Who's having to do more, bit more pressure, bit more intensity, lots going on? Okay, fab. I think I'm about 70%, 70, 75% there. Who's kind of holding it steady? Level playing field? Not too many. Who is living the time of their lives? It's all got a lot easier. We're knocking off at 4:30. Anyone? Okay, fab. So overwhelmingly, we're feeling this pressure. And I think it's interesting to think about what's driving that pressure. So I think there's a lot of economic uncertainty, and what that is doing in businesses is it's fueling this short-termism. So rather than businesses feeling more comfortable about long-term planning, there's this pressure now on marketeers to be like, well, let's get the results. When are the results coming? What are you going to do to drive those results? And it still starts to change the mind frame in the marketing function about what success looks like. And we'll talk to why we, as marketeers, I think, need to kind of like fight against that short-termism that's been driven by that economic uncertainty. Pace of technological change. Obviously, you walk out in the forum and there's loads of incredible tech vendors. But what that does is it opens up opportunity for us. It means we can do stuff we couldn't do a year ago, 3 years ago. It's incredible. But what it also does is it creates more expectation for us. It makes more stakeholders. It makes more noise and things to do. And then also, I don't know, a bit of a personal one, but we're seeing in clients a lot of restructuring, some redundancies. In fact, there was a stat out last week that 34% of marketeers are looking to change roles. So what that does as well is it creates this kind of environment of change and flux. So that means really that healthy ABM, how can we be the best ABMers that we can be? So what we thought we wanted to do, as you know, the pressure has increased, is we wanted to give you a bit of a boost, aside from the joy of just looking at our case studies. So if you look under your seat, there is a golden ticket. You might have to like raise up slightly to pull it out. So
it's actually brown.
It's gold. Marketeer, it's gold. Yeah. So some lucky ABMers in the room have won a £500 trip to the Corinthia Hotel Spa, where apparently Beyonce goes. Oh, yay!
all those people that went for a wee and a coffee.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Everyone who went to the toilet, they're not allowed it. So take the seats that they left. You snooze, you lose.
There's quite a lot of empty seats as well, so make sure you snap at your neighbours.
Yeah. So there's a couple of There's a couple of Corinthia Spa experiences. There's some Treatwell vouchers. But if you sadly didn't win any of those prizes, have a look under the other seats, then feel free to head to our stand, because we've got some wellness packages as well to energize and reinvigorate. And you can also meet myself. My name is Lorna Charlish. I'm the MD of the Radish agency, and my partner in crime, Chris Willocks, who is head of strategy. And we are from, if you don't know us, we're from an agency called the Radish Agency. So our whole thing is about making standing out pay off and combining creativity and distinctiveness with delivering commercial results. So that is us. So back to the point on pressure. We're calling this the busyness crisis. So back in the day, in my young day, before the Botox, things were a lot simpler, weren't they? You could like send some emails, you did some direct mail, maybe if you were lucky you did a bit of social selling, you probably won some awards. It was a lovely, lovely time. But now things have changed. There's so much more noise, and we often talk, don't we, about competitive markets, increasing commoditization. But what I thought was interesting about this is that in 2015, there were 10,000 SaaS businesses competing for buyer attention. This year, there's 30,000. Next year, there will be 70,000 other businesses, all trying to capture a space in buyers' minds. So it's just got a lot harder, a lot more noise, a lot more proliferation. I mean, of course, we're all selling to the same people. So, but that's not a worry, is it? Because all of our stuff's differentiated, so that's fine. So yeah, that's fine. 80% of B2B marketers say their product is differentiated. 14% of buyers agree. So everyone has access to the same data, the same channels, and the same personalization tools. And we've heard a lot about intent today, but I would kind of raise a bit of a contrary point to that. Because I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but when you go and look at a tool yourself, I don't know who's had this experience, you go and look at a tool yourself, and then suddenly you get outreach from the competitors to that tool. You get a LinkedIn message, you get an email. And what's happening is everybody is using the same intent data. Everybody's doing the same things. So what we risk is our buyers are getting overwhelmed by these beautifully executed ABM programs. And it creates even more of a problem for us because, you know, AI is helping us be more personalized and scale our insight, and that's wonderful. But what happens if all your competitors are also using AI to scale their insight and tailor their personalization? Tricky. So, AI, obviously. So, AI production has increased 42% amongst marketeers using AI. So suddenly there's 42% more content. And, this is all wonderful news for everybody, I'm sure, email has increased 33% globally. So there's now 23 billion emails out there, which is wonderful news, isn't it? We all want that. So, but we as marketeers know, don't we? Like, we know that what holds space in the minds and memories of buyers is strong, creative, well-executed, a narrative that buyers can trust and believe in. We know that's what works. And I think we've had a stat and a variation of this stat a few times, but I think it's really important in that context because, you know, as we've discussed before, we can do all of this content and we can do all this great personalization and we can intent ourselves into wherever we want to get to, but often the decision is already made, the battle has already been won or lost. And we know the commercials of creativity as well. So award-winning creative delivers 11 times the ROI, and neutral ad needs 10 times the spend. So what we're seeing in clients, I think, is those that are kind of going, do you know what, we're under this pressure and we need to deliver these results, but actually we're holding true to this idea that real creativity and a consistent message delivered over time pays dividends. So yeah, it's this mixture of needing greater distinctiveness to stand out in these crowded markets amongst the noise, allied with increased demand for commercial return, kind of almost like two contradictory demands that are putting that pressure on. And then, so, account-based branding. We've spoken about it on the stage before, and I think this is really interesting because, so last year we did a talk here, and then Robert's kind of said, this feels very much like branding. It's ABM, but it's branding, and it kind of came this thought that actually it doesn't need to be one or the other. ABM and brand can kind of coalesce. So I thought it might be worth actually sharing an example of kind of how we've done that in practice and what it looked like. How am I doing for time?
Hurry up.
Terribly. Thanks, Samuel. Right, so Kelly OCG, they are a global workforce and recruitment outsourcing solution. Get that out. So they're doing consultancy, they're doing large-scale recruitment. But what they're facing, as you can imagine, is operating in a competitive and commoditized market. And if there are any recruiters in the room, I'm sure you're not like that, but recruitment can be quite salesy, can't it? There can be a lot of promises, there can be a lot of, you need this and you need to pay this and this is the technology you need and it's all going to be great and don't worry about it. So that was the kind of industry that Kelly were operating in, but that also provided them with a competitive advantage to cut through that noise that we were talking about. So in an industry of jargon and empty promises, customers were lacking trust. And we looked at where ABM deals had been won in the past, and what buyers said was the reason that they chose Kelly over the other competitors, what inspired them to make that move. And the key thing that came out was the fact that there was this real kind of pragmatic approach. They could trust them to say, okay, we can deliver this, but we can't deliver that, and we're not going to tell you that we can deliver that. So this real sense of like straightforwardness, honesty, transparency, and we kind of honed in on that as that core thought that would then sit across all of the ABM, this real kind of confidence around this is a message we are going to land over and over again, and we're going to land it in a way that looks and feels really distinctive. So, highlight Kelly, and bear in mind, the industry is very blue, it's very much people smiling in their iPhones, you've seen it, you know, we know that. So, highlight Kelly's commitment to being honest, transparent, and no nonsense. So this was the creative that went across all of the ABM program, the creative wrapper. See through the fluff, true talk. So that true talk became like a stamp that the sales team really picked up and ran with. So it informed the tone of voice of all the communication, but it also informed the way that scales of work were put together around clarity about what was going to be delivered. And there's some other variants, fluff blue, talent solutions. And the great thing of this was it just looked and felt so completely different from everything else that was in the market.
The cat's weird.
The cat is weird. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now, and we've got examples of how this campaign rolled out in relation to the other pressure points. But just hold that in your mind as the kind of creative wrapper that then got rolled into the rest of the ABM program.
One more.
Oh, and also, this is another example of how that kind of creative could live and breathe across lots of different channels, lots of different content outputs. And you can see in the middle here, actually, an absolutely ridiculous direct mail with this fluffy little ram pre being shorn of its fluff before its jargon came off. So, yeah. Wonderful.
Wonderful. So the second pressure that I want to talk about is the changing buyer. So this isn't necessarily new news. We all know that younger buyers are entering these decision-making roles. But I think it's become this pivot point where it's become a real generational shift and a real changing of the guard. And they are, at the moment, the vast majority. So anyone who's born after 1980, which is myself, not sure about Lorna. The lights are pretty bright up here, so maybe just scraped it. Brutal. But this new generation has become the majority in these decisions. And they're completely different generations, so they behave differently, they value different things, they go to different places for information, they operate in groups differently. And when you look at the decision-making process that these people go through, 1/3 of it is rational. Will it do the job? Will this technology or partner meet the requirements of the RFP? Has it got the right features? Is it the right price point? All the rational stuff. Another 1/3 of it, though, is how do I feel about it personally? So how do I feel about this vendor? Do I like them? Do I trust them? And the final 1/3 of that decision is, how do I look to others? What's my boss going to think about this? What do my colleagues think? If it all goes terribly wrong, is there someone else I can point to who did the same thing and sort of cover myself? So emotion actually outweighs a lot of the logic that goes on in these decisions for this audience. And this gets me thinking around shifts in ABM. And a lot of talk around technology. And for me, the next big shift isn't some hyperscale, personalized AI platform. Well, it might be, but for me, the next shift is about psychology. It's about understanding these buyers, the mindset of these buyers, and understanding the human decision-making that goes on. What are their biases? How do they operate in these group environments? What gets their attention? How do we persuade them? And if they are risk-averse, how do we reduce that perceived level of risk when we're talking to them? So all of these things. And there's a couple of examples, I think, of how we can think about psychology in this group with regards to ABM. And one of them is the fact that our targeting strategies for ABM generally focus on the buyers, right? Logical. Those champions, economic buyers, technical buyers, personas, whatever the way we structure our buyers. But we know that this audience is much more consensus-driven in their decision-making. They're much more collaborative. The first thing they do when they start a buying journey is speak to someone they trust. So there's this wider sphere of influence around our buyers. And LinkedIn call this the hidden buyer gap. And it's all of those people that probably aren't in the sales meeting, but they've got a real influence on that buying group. So that could be procurement, legal, risk, etc. And they're shaping the beliefs of the core buying group. But outside of that as well, we've got external influences. So partners, We all know that our buyers are in WhatsApp groups and Slack groups, talking to their peers. They're asking advice from analysts. There's a much wider sphere of influence outside of the organization as well. But yet we just focus in that purple circle, I should say, for our targeting. So I think we need to be thinking much more broadly about our targeting strategies with ABM. And another example just of how this new cohort behave, they're much more skeptical. They're much more, they don't believe our corporate waffle anymore, unfortunately, our marketing waffle. They can see right through it. They don't trust corporations, actually. They don't trust institutions. So they value authenticity far more than previous generations. And I think for me, the interesting thing here is, yes, we can be clearer with our communications, we can be honest, transparent, but we also need to think about how can we dial up our authenticity in our communications. And we know that employees get much more engagement than corporations. People trust your employees more than they trust you as a brand. And I think this is an area that's been quite under-leveraged. And it's always difficult, isn't it, to get people to try and post something. Not everybody wants to post something on LinkedIn. Not everyone feels confident. But I think it's about creating the right mechanisms to get people to do that. And just going back to the Kelly case study, the cut the fluff that Lorna introduced, they really saw employees as a target audience for the ABM campaign. And thinking about, actually, if we can engage and leverage our workforce, A, we get some free marketing, but B, it feels more authentic. And they had these big office launch parties around Europe. They gave their employees time off to potentially go out for lunch and all these props. Some people bake cookies. And then we had this competition called the True Talk Challenge, which is basically just getting all the employees to post something that they've done for their clients that's in line with their ethos of honesty. And it got so much traction, so much attention, that it did a lot of the marketing lift for us. And people went nuts for it. They took these little rams on holiday and all sorts of things. So just to wrap up on that one, I think everybody should be thinking about this new buyer, the new psychology of this buyer, and shaping their ABM programs around that. Back to Lorna.
So, third point, artificial everything. So, I find this really interesting. So, 87% of online content is predicted to be AI generated by 2026. 87%. So that not only is that changing our teams, our workflows, all of that is very much changing the buyer experience. And I love this quote. This is from Mark Cuban. He's made a lot of money. He probably knows what he's talking about. Within the next 3 years, there will be so much AI, in particular AI video, people won't know if what they see or hear is real, which will lead to an explosion of face-to-face engagement, events, and jobs. But 62% of current ABM programs currently don't include a face-to-face element to them. So that, for me, feels like a really interesting opportunity when we are facing this pressure and we are looking at ways that we can re-energize. And something I think is interesting is when we're sometimes working with budget limitations, and Robert's spoken to this in terms of ABM as an operating system, but leveraging existing budget lines, existing budget commitments, but using them to reinvigorate your own ABM programs. So this was a really example, weaving back into the case study. See what we're doing here? Seamlessly. This is this huge corporate, this huge event that Kelly are at. All of their key buyers are at. So it's this really crucial time to get that face-to-face interaction with the ABM and target buyers. So what we did was we worked with the events team, able to use the budget that wasn't assigned to the ABM program, delicious, to kind of reimagine what their presence at the event could look like with an ABM lens on it. So you can see you've got that creative wrapper. You've got the little ram that goes in, it gets shaved. You get given a little lamb to take home with you, or a ram, whatever it is. And people kind of like that, don't they? Take it home to their kids or themselves, no judgment. And then we also did tailored drops to particular buyers. So in the tailored drop, there was a lint roller, obviously get rid of the fluff. You see what we did there? So candy floss. And I think that the really lovely point that was made earlier about fun and humour. Like, we're all in B2B, aren't we? And we're all buying stuff and selling stuff, but actually kind of adding a little bit of that fun into it was really, really effective. And it just, to that point earlier, was so much more distinctive than what was else out there in the market. And then, so just to quickly touch on the results from that, 74 new opportunities and 60 million in pipeline. So the integration of that big creative wrapper, the content that sat around a core narrative around transparency, that true talk kind of stamp, allied to the employee engagement, and then a really good segueing of an existing events budget, kind of all pulled together into this example, I think, of account-based branding in practice. And also, I think this is an interesting point, what we're seeing as well with our clients, I don't know if you're seeing this as well, is small is beautiful. That's an example of a large-scale event. But what we're seeing is buyers seem to be wanting to be more smaller, more intimate settings. And I don't know if it's driven perhaps by budget cuts, there's less learning and development budget in the buying groups, potentially. But we're seeing people being really receptive to kind of like an hour and a half networking meetings. So we've seen kind of cluster ABM where you have a particular topic, buyers good at coming to that, or when you've got an influencer in a one-to-one program and you kind of run one event that takes an hour and a half, we're seeing real kind of receptiveness, and there's a budget increase in that as well. So ABM marketers are spending more on VIP-focused customer
Thank God
events.
I've got a different outfit on, actually.
What?
Glad I'm not wearing the same outfit.
Yes, that would be awkward. So I think we've definitely seen that as a way to kind of boost programs.
Thanks. Okay, last point. I've only got a couple of minutes. The last pressure 4, is all about this idea that we know that ABM's a long game. It takes time to set programs up. It takes time to build trust, and sales cycles take forever. But there is this pressure, isn't there, to get more done quickly and show more results. And the two are quite hard to reconcile. We've all had leadership kind of chasing us down for kind of month-end pipeline when we know the sales cycle is 10 years. And we set ourselves up for failure sometimes with these. We do these 3-month pilot programs to prove results for the program, but we know the sales cycle takes 18 months. Don't know how that works. But it's not just actually leadership that are putting pressure on. I think if you don't show within your program some real visible traction, sometimes, like the lady said, you can lose sales engagement. And if you lose, they become disillusioned, it doesn't feel like it's happening, then you're screwed, if you lose sales. I'm sure you can bring them back, by the way, whoever that was. So we've got this concept at Radish Towers called intervention ABM, and it's this idea that a lot of people have, well-established setup programs, and they're doing all the channels that you'd expect. But sometimes you need a little injection, a really short burst of activity that can really sort of highlight and glow up an area of the program, give it an uplift. And this came from the idea of clients with established programs, but the concept works just as well for people starting out, looking at their current marketing ecosystem and going, where can I give it a real bit more budget, a bit more energy? Where can I kind of add an ABM lens to that? And one of the examples really, the Kelly event stand, if that was just a thing on its own, is an example of intervention at ABM. It's looking at, right, we've got this event, we've got a lot of people already signed up to it. What can we do to really uplift this event and put some energy behind it and maybe wrap an ABM journey around it, and that becomes an intervention. But another example is ads. We often do this ABM ad makeover, where essentially we look at ads within a program and try to lift their performance. And one example from one of our clients, Exasol, we did this quite kind of quirky, sarcastic ads all around pain points for particular clients that we were targeting. It was a database, but it got amazing uplift in CTR, and also actually one of the clients that we were targeting commented on the ad saying they liked it, and Exasol went on to, thank you, 1 minute running. Exasol went on to sell them quite a large deal, so it kind of shows that marketing does work. So that's one area, and that's another one that's really visible. Sales are going to see those ads, they're going to feel something's going on. We're going to see an uplift, hopefully, in performance by being more creative and more personalized. And another sort of way of looking at intervention ABM is potentially looking at a really sort of short motion within your program. So I call this the close, loss, comeback, but it's just this idea of, after 6 months has passed, you've maybe lost a deal. There's a lot of vendors who are rethinking their decisions. They're not quite happy with the vendors that they've chosen. So a really personalized engagement can have amazing results at that point. And that could be looking at why they didn't choose you and framing your messaging around that objection. Or it could just be, why did they choose the competitor, and sort of one of the reasons that they might not be happy with them. But a personalized outreach, maybe a nice, DM wrapper. We've done personalized letters before. We've done nice storybooks. It doesn't have to be as elaborate as that, but highly personalised, and it can be done in a couple of weeks, and it shows real traction, real uplift. So that's the point really, is these interventions that can show visibly something's happening, something's going on, sales can get on board, and we can start to see some quick results. Thanks for listening.
I'm sure we've got time for one or two questions. What questions do you have for the amazing Radish team? Everyone wants a coffee. I've got a question. Yeah. Is there anything ABM can't solve? It's solved brand, it's solving org design, it's solving strategy, go-to-market. What do you think?
That's a great question. I think, we do, and we've had this before. Someone sort of said, well, if all of this is ABM, what's bloody not ABM? What's just marketing? But what I think was a really lovely point made earlier by John, which was this account-based mindset. And I think actually it can feel obvious sometimes, can't it? We go, actually, we need to apply more strategic thinking, more insight, more creativity. But it's kind of holding that lens up to ourselves and going, we're really busy. We've got 58 meetings in a day. Like, what is really important? It's taking that step back, isn't it? And going, okay, this is what's going to really cut through and kind of get that engagement that we need. So in answer to your question, ABM is everything, and that's fine. And then it will be double the size next year. So it's great.
Agreed. That we can agree on. Brilliant. Plenty of food for thought for the break.
There is a question.
There is a question. Oh, we've got a question. Excellent.
Hello. Hi, I'm a marketing manager for an edtech company, and my team's not tiny, but it's not huge. So my question is, how do small marketing teams keep up with the amount of content that needs to be created to keep an ABM campaign targeted to personas and job titles, industries? There's just so much to produce and refresh.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of thoughts on that. One is, I think the whole ABB principle of telling a story that's really true to your brand and sort of flexing that in different ways to different buyers is another way of doing it, rather than sort of trying to find a specific message for every single account. That is potentially one way. But I also think it comes back to just quality over quantity as well. I think everyone's doing everything, and then everything sort of looks and feels the same, and actually just going back and going, are we really doing that the absolute best of our ability? And that's a little bit of the intervention sort of thinking as well. It's just doing one thing really well that gets noticed and gets traction.